Welcome to episode 12 of the What If video podcast. I'm so excited about today's conversation. My sweet friend Erica Pearson is my guest today for this conversation, and today we're talking about unmet expectations. I don't know about you, but I have so many of those in my life that I feel like I've had all these great expectations for things and all these great dreams for things, and then they just didn't happen. But today, instead of just talking about unmet expectations, Eric is helping us dig into what do we do with these unmet expectations when it pertains to our relationship with the Lord. What do we do when someone's sick and we pray for healing on this side of, eternity, but it doesn't happen, and we know that as believers they're ultimately healed, but the Lord didn't do it the way that we thought or asked him to. So what do we do with all of this? How do we continue on with our relationship with the Lord in the midst of unmet expectations? This conversation is so good, and I know that you're going to enjoy it. So here it is, my sweet friend, Erica Pearson. Erica, thank you so much for coming here today.
Thank you so much for having me.
Yeah, I'm so excited. I feel like we've known each other for so long. I had some of your littles in kids' church, and
Yes,
now they have cars and stuff. So
now they have a big truck.
She has a big truck. And I still love her so much. So awesome. Well, I'm so excited to talk about unmet expectations with you. I feel like as believers, I think everybody has that, because for me, I feel like just being a new believer and even a seasoned believer, I sometimes still will find myself taking a scripture out of context and making it, forming it to be what I want it to mean. And just I'm like standing on this, but it doesn't mean that. So yeah, it's not right.
Yeah, and then you fall, you trip on it, and fall flat on your face. And
then
wonder.
You're disappointed. Yeah.
Yep, and then you're hurt, and then it all goes from there and spirals. Mm-hmm. I feel like when I write, I'm the one that's saying, can you say that out loud? Are we allowed to say that? Mm-hmm. Are we allowed to admit that? But that's the majority of my story. I feel like it's what I bring to the table.
And that's what I love, because that's real. I feel like I grew up Catholic, but when I was 18, I started going to a super charismatic church, big shift. And it was great, and I grew, but there was so much poured into me, oh, you're going to do this, and you're going to do this, and believe God for this, and he's called you to do this. And then when he didn't, then I felt like a failure. And
you're left. I said recently that I felt like my prayers were more like a recall list. Felt like they'd been recalled and put on the shelf and expired, and it made it really hard to learn how to talk to him again. Mm-hmm. And that's what I really had to do. Learn how to talk to him again.
That's awesome.
Because I grew up in a denomination that, I love and would not say anything negative about, but I learned how to be a student, but I don't know that I knew how to be a daughter.
That's so good.
I was a student, but I started treating this like a textbook and didn't realize that. So the past couple of years for me has been kind of years of unlearning and relearning. And I felt God really saying to me, I wasn't there, and that wasn't me, and I was misrepresented there, but here I am. If you'll just come close and get still, here, I'm going to show you who I really am.
That's so good. So choosing to not be a student, but a son or a daughter.
Yeah, because think about your children. And what being a mother, I know it's the best way I can connect with him, because part of my story is I couldn't always connect with him as a father, even though if you see my writing now, Dad and I became very close, and it's a redemptive part of our story, but I did not connect with him as Dad. Maybe that's why I did do better as his student. But then when I lost Dad and needed a dad, that kind of fell in place.
And I think there's a lot of people that don't have that father-daughter relationship. So, or they have a negative view of their father, you know? So then to ask them to believe in somebody else's father, I can't imagine that. I have a great relationship with my dad. So for me, I just can't even imagine what that would be like, and how hard that would be to separate the two.
There's so many things that we get jumbled in the way of our faith. And I was thinking, for so long I thought I had a faith issue. because people would say to me things like, if I said out loud something I was worried about, well, I thought you had more faith in that. So it made me feel like, well, maybe I have a faith issue. And then as I began this journey of kind of unpacking my story, I realized, no, I think I have a trust issue. And then I kind of got tickled at myself and thought, no, Erica, you just have a human issue. You're just a human.
Right.
So can we take the labels off of it and just admit that it's okay to be this real and this honest with the Lord?
And doesn't he want us to be? Gosh, because he knows.
Yep.
I think it's funny that we do try to hide this stuff from him, like as if he does not already know that, you know? I'll find myself saying that sometimes. Like, I know that you already know, but like, why can't I just be like, sometimes I'm goofy. Like, why can't I bring that to the table? Like, why? He created me like that.
Yeah.
He knows that part of me and he loves that part of me.
Oh,
you know?
absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And they're all here. They're all here, all real, all humans, you know.
Absolutely. Yes. So share a little bit about your story.
Yeah. So my story really starts when I was 14 and my parents divorced. And that was a big mile marker. But I started middle school in a divorce care group. And within months, I was in a grief group because my parents' divorce was final in April and my mother was killed in a car accident, very tragically, very quickly in July.
Oh, I'm so sorry.
So within a few short months, everything in my life was uprooted and different. And, you know, for years I walked through that because grieving as a teenager is very different because life is expected to keep going. And then, you know, there's this beautiful season where my father and I were able to reconnect at my wedding, actually.
Oh, wow.
When Dad walked me down the aisle. That was like a turning point for us. And we had a wonderful relationship. And back in 2017, we found out that he had cancer. And, you know, I think I had told myself that my quota for suffering must have been full, that I was kind of done. And when he got cancer, I was like, this can't be how this is going to end. And we found out in June and he was gone by September.
Wow.
So when you talk about, you know, unmet expectations, I just really expected that this was going to move, that this is not going to be how the story ended. And, you know, then it wasn't just that. Very quickly, I had 4 or 5 huge losses within a year after losing him. And really, you know, as I said now, like my family, my people, like not the people I married into, but my family, you know, all my giants are gone. And I've had to learn how to stand on my own 2 feet and stand on my own faith. And that's been, I went through a really dark time. From 2017 to 2020, went through a really, really dark time. And it shook me because I thought that I had it down. I knew the stuff.
Right.
I was a student. I was a good student.
Yeah.
I knew how to study. I knew the stuff. But when, you know, when the mountains didn't move, when the things didn't happen, I began to go, oh, wait a minute. You know, what is all this and where are you? And to be really honest, which is kind of who I am, I set it all down for a time.
Yeah.
I didn't walk away from my faith, but I set it down.
Right.
It terrified me, scared me, and I wasn't quite sure how to find my way back to him.
Wow.
So
what did that look like? Where was the turn when you set it down? How'd I pick it back up?
Well, you know, I set it down. I tried to set it down.
Yeah.
But I could always feel him going, that's cute, but, you know, I'll let you do that. But I kind of termed where I felt like I sat at the edge of my faith. And there was a time when I felt like I looked over and I'm like, if I walk away from this, if I set this down just because this isn't what I thought it was going to be, what's going to happen to my children, what's going to happen to generations after me? I know I can't set this down, so I've got to figure out where you are right now. And it was, you know, it was Nana that actually said to me, anybody who hears this and knows me will know immediately who Nana is.
They do.
where is God in our suffering? He's right where we put him. And I realized that as I was trying to set it down, and he wouldn't let me because I still felt that tug in my spirit. So I just began to lean into the hard things. And I began to study doubt, and I began to study depression, and I began to study what it means to lament. And that's what helped turn the lights back on.
Oh, that's so good.
So,
Nana.
Of
course. A Nana nugget.
A Nana nugget. I like that.
She needs to make like a Facebook page or something. I love her. That's so good. I feel like so many people can set it down and walk away from it. But something that you just said earlier, like you had lost all of your giants, but you're that for your family, for Callie, you know what I mean? For your littles and nieces and nephews that you have an abundance of. I mean, they're going to be looking at you one day as their giant, and they probably already do. So just carrying that on, you know what I mean? Like, oh, gosh.
Well, I realized I really had to fight for that.
Yeah.
And even though my faith felt really fragile, I owned that and knew that that's where I was and that it was really fertile soil for growing something new. And I had really good people speak into my life that said, if you can get to the other side of this, you're going to have something that most people don't ever.
Right. Absolutely.
Because that's when they just walk away from it.
Yeah.
And don't ever get to the beautiful other side of it.
Yeah.
And I don't know that I'm on the other side of it as much as I'm learning to journey with him where I'm at, where I am.
Well, and that's what we have to do, right? We have to continue on in our journey with him. And as you're talking, I love that visual, and you're a teacher, so you probably are all about the visual aids of the jar that broke, and then he put it back together, but you still can see like all of the cracks and everything.
Oh yeah, and it's stronger.
Yes, but you see the light through it, where before when it was whole, you couldn't see any of that. Do you know what I mean? And now like through the broken pieces, you can see the light come through. Oh, I love that. I love that because he is near to the brokenhearted. He is our potter. Like he takes this clay mold and he shapes us into what we don't come out in a shape. He shapes us into who he wants us to be. And I think that the hard thing for a lot of believers, myself included, is that like I felt like, okay, well, I'm saved and now he's promising me all of these really good things. Everything's going to work together for my good. Everything, the good and the bad. Like, and that verse was really hard for me. I lost a boyfriend that I was dating back in 2005, just very unexpectedly, in a motorcycle accident. And everybody, Romans 8:28, and I'm like, please stop. Like, no.
We cannot be cut and paste Christians.
Yes.
That's something I recently read, that you cannot cut and paste this, and you cannot, just stick it like little spiritual Band-Aids all over the place, because we create so much more pain for one another when we do that. And, the truths that come out of that particular verse, I've learned they're truths only the Holy Spirit can tell me.
Absolutely.
Nobody else can speak that to me.
Right.
And, one of the things that helped me come out of it is there's a verse in Ecclesiastes that says, it is better to go to a house of mourning than to go to a house of feasting, since that is the end of all mankind, and the living should take it to heart. Grief is better than laughter, for when a face is sad, a heart may be glad. The heart of the wise is in a house of mourning.
Wow. And
I had a friend that called me up and invited me to a group called Grief Share. And I kind of reluctantly, I said, no, I'm good. I know how to grieve. I've been grieving since I was 14. I've got this down.
Yeah.
And, the joke is that I then got the perfect attendance certificate. They really gave me one because I never missed a week. But I love this group, and I go back again and again because they are the realest group, authentic group of believers who set with all their brokenness and all their pain, and this is where I am, and this is who God is to me, and there's no mask.
Yeah.
And that's what won't get you, I feel like, through the hard stuff.
Right. Yes.
So.
And I just, like I keep just thinking about this in general, like his word and who he is, and he is good in the hard and he is good in the bad. And and I mean, the mask, like you're saying, I remember reading a Natalie Grant book years ago. It talked about an eating disorder that she struggled with, that I did too growing up. So I was very much drawn to that book. And she has a song also about it. I can't remember the name of it right now, but it talked about just taking off this mask and being who God has made us to be, and letting, he already sees us, but allowing him in to see us, and allowing others. Like community is such a big part of that. And I feel like when we're getting these like frustration or unmet expectations, it's so easy to isolate, because I don't want to hear that God's good in that moment. Like he didn't do this for me, and he said that he was going to. So I think
one of the analogies that really I drew upon was the lights went out on my face, but I had some really good, sweet friends who came and sat with me in the darkness, and maybe lit a candle. They didn't come and try to just throw a passage. They just sat with me, and I realized you can't go in and throw the light on somebody. You get disoriented and you're not sure where you are.
Right.
But if we would just learn to sit with one another. And you know, sometimes that's all my Bible study is now. I get up, I hold the Bible, I have my coffee, and I just sit with him. It's like a silent resolve of, I'm still in this. You are still my God. I don't understand it all. And you know, the verse I told you that I tripped over was, you know, you say to this mountain, it will move, and it will move if you just have the faith the size of a mustard seed. And I'm like, Lord, I've got the faith. I got that down. It's little right now, and I know it is. But none of these have moved. And I have watched friends whose parents have survived cancer, and their parents have survived car wrecks. And everything I've prayed for, their mountain moved, but, you know, and you're left wondering. And I became obsessed with mountains. Searched them all in Scripture, was convinced I was going to find something in there. You must have meant something different, God. You know, there had to be something in there. You know those writers who will pull something out and you can't believe they saw that? And I found some really awesome things, but the one thing that I found over and over again are the mountains are where he meets us. And they're who.
That's so good.
It's where he meets you, and it's where he called people again and again and again, come to this mountain and meet with me. And, you know, I just realized that I didn't trip over his word. I just tripped over a wrong concept that I thought it wasn't his word. His word will never leave us empty. And it won't leave us confused. So.
Yes. Oh, it's so good. The mountains are where he meets you. And like, I guess my favorite place is Colorado.
Oh,
and I think maybe, okay, well, I'm from Florida, so everything's flat.
Well, the beach is my favorite.
Yeah, but when I went to Colorado, I was like, what in the world is this? Like, we don't have mountains in Florida. We don't have them here in Nashville. I mean, there are hills here. When I moved here, I thought were mountains because I've just never had seen anything. But like, when I go to Colorado, the mountains are, it's so funny because when they're in our life, it's like they're this like hindrance or something that's like standing in our way and separating us from where we want to go. But when you step back and look at them, they're the most beautiful, like breathtaking. And in my mind, on the bottom of the mountains, I picture like pastures and streams and just beauty, you know? So I guess if like for me personally, if I can just apply that and get that picture in my mind when I'm thinking of the mountain as something that's keeping me from where I want to go. And instead, the mountain is somewhere that he's calling me to meet with him, not keeping me from somewhere. Like if we can just swap that, you know, our thinking to think like that and to absorb the beauty and the stillness. And
because the very thing that I would have wanted him to move would have been, of course, ultimately take the cancer away. But he did, and I know that because of his word. If I stand on all of it, and I know he did. I know Dad is healthy and whole, and all the other ones that my loved ones, they're healthy and whole. The grief is what I would have wanted him to move, but the grief is what changed me.
Made you a
and
daughter.
made me who I am, and made me a daughter.
That's so good. You have some really good points in the back that I want to make sure that we get to, and these are kind of like action steps that can help somebody, because I really want us to leave people, what do they do in these times of unmet expectations and disappointment? How do they get from a student to a daughter? And how do they see the Father is a good father and maybe replace that like earthly relationship they had.
Right.
So the first thing that you said is trust is a verb. So talk about that.
Yeah, it's not a feeling. There's a lot of times I can't stand on what I feel, and I can't always stand on what I know.
Right.
But I can do. And I had a moment with my son after all these hard times when it was still dark, and he broke his arm, and that seems like such a small thing, like, oh, he broke his arm, you know, you've been through. But it's the first time he's ever been put under. Yeah, you can try to take yourself there, you know. And it was actually really traumatic because he screamed, and then he's out, and then I was all by myself because of COVID, and I just said out loud, Lord, I don't really trust you right now, and I've seen too much, but that's my boy, and I love you, and I am talking to you, and I'm here, and just walk with me. And if you just could have seen me and God just kind of pacing the halls.
Yeah.
So to me, that's what I would say, be honest. And it is a verb, and it is I might not feel this, but this is where I am, and I'm with you, and I'm calling, you know, Lord, I believe, help my unbelief. You know, here I am.
Yes.
And it's okay if you don't feel it.
Yeah, absolutely.
And it's okay if you don't, it's okay if something's gnawing at you. Because somewhere we've got caught up in, well, you can't say that because you're not real, and you're
right.
Yeah. Let me read you this one thing.
Yes.
I can't not pick up a book.
I love that book.
No More Faking, Fine.
Who's the author of it?
Esther Fleece.
Yes.
This is who taught me how to lame it.
Okay.
And she said, this was not a fake faith. It is a deep, authentic, worth everything faith that comes at a cost. I didn't know what to call it at the time, but a lament was giving me a language for relating to God, my creator. But it's not a fake faith. It's a worth everything, deep, authentic faith. And I think that's what I want people to know more than anything is it's not ever fake.
Right.
You don't ever have to fake it. It's not ever not real, or you don't have enough. Right. If you're calling out to him, you have enough.
Right. Absolutely.
So.
And I love that you put in here, rest, recover, reconnect, and relearn that he is trustworthy. That right there, I feel like we can just leave and be like, I kept reading that, I highlighted it, I printed these out again and like bolded. I'm like, we have to make sure to say that. Rest, recover, reconnect, and relearn that he was trustworthy.
That came through my study, kind of exhaustive study of Elijah. And I just kind of walked with him. And it's the first story that I read over and over and over and over. And I made sure to stop and really see him as a human walking through that. And I love, I love when Elijah first calls out and it's like, I'm done, Lord. And, he says, go to sleep, get some sleep.
Right.
You can't hear me really well right now. Just get some sleep.
Yes.
Eat.
Do what we do our part. Also. I feel like sometimes we can get so spiritual that God's like, okay, you have to sleep in. Like, here's the things that you have to also do.
Yeah.
You can't just sit out in the yard and wait for me to do everything. Like,
absolutely.
There's such a side of something. Our part, like we have to do our part also.
Well, because that's where we're going to change.
Yeah. And I love when you were saying relearn that he is trustworthy. I kept reading that over and over. And something that I find myself having to do often is looking back and remembering the times he was faithful. And remembering it, replaying those times and replaying those times. Like if I'm getting in a season of fear or anxiety, or I have to remember the times that he's been faithful.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, then you said, discover that when faith feels fragile, it's still possible to trust God and grow spiritually by talking honestly with him. And that's like we talked about, taking the mask off. And I love the picture of you just in the hospital. Like, that's such a picture of faith. Like, just walk with him. We don't even, like you said, you sit sometimes and just hold your Bible and your coffee. Like, grab a cup of coffee and walk with him. Be still before him. It tells us that. Be still. Like, we can't constantly be talking. Like, I'm Italian, so like I want to do that. But I'm never going to hear him if I don't shut my mouth.
Yeah.
So there's nothing wrong with, like,
we don't have to go in here and like check off. I read this. I can sit, have my coffee, and just be still and be with him and acknowledging that he is God and I am surrendered to him, you know? I think we make it so much more complicated than it has to be.
Oh, we absolutely do. We absolutely do.
Yes.
Yeah.
It's not about the amount of faith. Faith is a gift from the Lord.
When I really thought I had a faith issue, I had another good friend, and that's another community.
Yeah.
Community is everything. And he said to me, he said, Erica, you're forgetting that faith is a gift. And this has got nothing to do with you and what you can do and what you can accomplish.
Yeah.
And when I realized that, I was able to get to the root and get back to the relearning to trust him. So.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then last but not least, and we'll end with this, I think we should just write a song on this. You've got to feel it if you want to heal it.
I would love that, and I've always wanted to write a song.
I love it. Such a teacher line. I love it so much. I laughed when you sent this to me. I'm like, this is awesome. Tell me just briefly what that is.
That's the part people don't love. When I say it, you have to feel it to heal it.
Yeah.
I had a sweet friend who had some pretty traumatic things happen, and she's the one who really taught me that. They had to really get in and actually massage some deep tissue and break it up.
Yeah.
And you've got to feel and be real with the Lord so that he can heal you in those places.
So good. That's so good. Thank you so much for coming and sharing. I appreciate you so much. Yes.
We would love to connect with you. Follow us on social media at What If Video Podcast, or check out our website by visiting ashleylmcclain.com. You can see what's coming up on What If, submit your What If questions, read Ashley's blog, and so much more. We can't wait to connect with you.
The What If podcast is now on iTunes. Subscribe to our video or audio podcast today and don't miss another episode.
The mountains are where he meets us. I just have replayed that over and over and over in my mind since I had this conversation with Erica. It's just a sweet, sweet representation of who the Lord is in our lives, right? I can't get the picture of like the streams and the stillness of like the valleys and the mountain and how beautiful that is, and what a beautiful place that would be to meet with the Lord. And I love Erica so much. I hope that you all will go and check her out on her Facebook, A Stirred Heart. You'll find all of that in this video and in the links. Her writing is beautiful. It will encourage you. She writes with such truth and boldness and authenticity, which is why I wanted her to come and share on the podcast. I hope that she will come back again soon. I hope that you all have gotten so much out of this conversation about unmet expectations. Check out our website, get our free downloadable planner. You can find all of that there, and we love you, and I hope to see you next time on the What If Video Podcast.